Hi, my name's Tim Lighty. I build just random stuff, mostly Batman things. If you've seen anything Batman related, there's a chance that it could be mine. So this is one of my newer builds. This is from January. I finished this year. This is Batman versus Mr. Freeze. So this is very much inspired by the Batman and Robin movie, the famous or maybe infamous movie.
A classic piece of cinema.
It's remembered significantly, but for various reasons. And so this is just a giant sort of vignette. I wanted to put in lots of ice and lots of lights. It started out as something that sounded fun, and then it became very difficult and annoying. This is actually something I've been wanting to do for a number of years. So the Mr. Freeze in the build, he's custom chromed, and I got those done maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and finally got around to building it now. So it's just a really nice, exciting piece. Lots of cool lights. I think there are maybe 70 individual lights in there. LED. They're all life lights. This has a full 360-degree background and build, which is something I've been doing recently, which is a great way to waste pieces. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm just trying to make the back of my build more interesting than the front. So I want people to come up and say, okay, yeah, that's cool, but what does the back look like? So there's some giant, Joel Schumacher-inspired statues at the back, and there's a giant Brontosaurus at the front, and it's a cool piece. Some nice colors, sand red, make it difficult to build.
There's so much that's eye-catching about this build, even just like the background wall there and the pieces like those kind of hieroglyphic pieces you were able to include in the background there. But then what really stands out is definitely the ice formation. So talk a little bit more about kind of the parts you used in that and how you were able to get such crazy-looking shapes here.
Yeah, so it's mostly a lot of like unicorn pieces. That's primarily what these spikes are. And because there's so much lighting in there, it has to be very transparent. So one of my favorite pieces to use is the transparent headlight brick. I've got hundreds of those, and I buy them as much as I can. And it's just a really good way to get lighting in there. So a lot of this stuff is kind of hollow. There's a lot of wiring in there. But yeah, it's all about just leaving space for the lighting and the wires. I think like in the center here, just gonna grab this off. There's just a lot, like the temple is hollow and it's just full of battery boxes. I can't remember, this takes at least like 16 AAA batteries to run.
And it's like a powerhouse here.
Yeah, it could charge the whole city if it wasn't frozen or something. So, not to try and make it easy, but it's just, it's fun, especially with lighting in public shows. You want to try and kind of go over the top, and this is definitely over the top in a Joel Schumacher inspired way.
It definitely stands out, and I know you pulled off the Mr. Freeze figure there, so if you can maybe give us a closer look at some of the details.
Yep, so this is it's not one-to-one from the Lego version chromed, but it's a bit modified, but it is a chromed version, worth the effort, I think, because it's just very fun and very campy. But yeah, this is from Chrome Block City. He's a guy out in, I think, Poland. He does really great stuff, so if you need anything, he's the guy to go to.
Yeah, and there's still articulation and everything, even with the chrome?
Yeah, a couple years ago there was. Now it's starting to crack because, I don't want to play with him too much because, fingerprints and everything. But, he can move around. He can do some Mr. Freeze things. So, yeah.
Very nice. And then what other minifigures do we have here? What's kind of the action going on?
These are a lot of Mr. Freeze goons, and they're very fashionable. They have fishnet leggings and spikes and, sequins. Another thing I like using is Citizen Brick. They're one of my favorite customizers. So, just really nice looking torsos and appropriate attire for freezing goons. One of the cool figures around here is this frozen police cop who's, I like trying to put a lot of action in the builds. And so to have one where I could really show a cop completely frozen over in ice is just a really cool thing to do. So, yeah.
And then the dinosaur also looks fantastic here with the lights inside that, the ice on top, and then just the shape in general. So there's so much to take in there.
Yeah, so this was just a giant brontosaurus. This is one of the last things I built because I was avoiding building it. So I maybe spent like a day on it, but just really cool. He has flex tube in the neck. It's one of my favorite pieces, and I use it for rigidity. And also kind of hollow, so we can get some nice lighting in there. But Of course, you have to have this so Batman can slide down it. So it's one of the requirements of the build, and it's like, well, there are already so many requirements. So
Was it difficult to merge all of the kind of like trans clear pieces with the regular, green dinosaur pieces there?
not particularly. Most of this was just sort of like whenever there's transparent, I'm just grabbing random pieces, and that's a good way to keep it sort of natural, where I'm not really thinking too much. I'm just kind of grabbing whatever kind of transparent parts I can, and that's sort of how you get that nice ice look around it without really having to overthink it. Yeah.
And then how about this sort of like temple, the build-up section here in the middle? How do all those nicely decorated pieces you've got there?
Yes, those are okay. At the time, I had to go buy a bunch of Frozen sets for them, so I appreciate you noticing them. These giant windscreen pieces that are in that new opalescence color. That was something a bit later in the build, but just getting lots of different shades of transparent, because there is transparent colors, but you can get some with glitter, you can get some opalescence, so it really sort of overall adds to the piece. Nice. Yeah.
And no, the whole build is fantastic. Even just the flooring, you did a lot of kind of like studs not on top, sideways building there, so you were able to get all these like cool ice patterns in the middle of it.
Yeah, that was a good way to sort of fill the space. There is a lot of blue on there. I don't want it completely blue. But to get just some nice shaping in there, and it was sort of inspired by, in the movie, there's a lot of purples and colors on the flooring, and so that's just sort of kind of replicate that.
And then I also want to talk about some of these great figures that you have next to this build as well. So you've brick built some of the iconic characters from Batman. Talk a little bit about these.
Yeah, so these are some of these might be the oldest things on the table. I think I made them in 2017. Okay. So these are from a collection I did around 10 or 12 Batman figurines. And the funny thing about these, I was looking at these a couple days ago, and I'm like, I think I built these pre-Mixel joint. Like, these were before we had the cool, like, hinge pieces and, like, curved slopes and everything that we had back in the day. So when I think back about building these, I'm just like, oh my God, if I had those parts then, the figures would be insane. But these are just 3 figures from the collection. These are the only ones that I have left. We have Batman, of course, Penguin, and Catwoman. So the Penguin's very much inspired by the Batman Returns version, and he uses a Duplo bearskin rug for his backdrop. Yeah.
Not something you see very often.
No, and I had to specifically find it. And by the way, this was for a convention build, so I had to wait on the builds before I could display them. And within that 6 months of waiting, everyone decided to start using the bearskin rug. So it wasn't very fashionable at the time, but it was a fun part inclusion. Batman has his own custom cape that I just cut up. He's a really cool piece. He's sort of the centerpiece of the collection, of course. I really like his belt. It uses some minifigure backpacks as pouches. And of course, Catwoman is really cool. She's got some amazing goggles. Just a really fun piece. And they're nice to have still around as a small collection that I can bring to shows.
Yeah. So you mentioned these are some older builds of yours. Do you ever go back and redo older builds and see, with the updated parts that are available today, what can they look like?
In memory, I go back and think. I don't actually. I'm fortunate now that I'm able to keep a lot of my old stuff, and so I'm able to keep it as it were. So I don't really want to make too many changes or anything, if possible, because it's kind of nice to have sort of a living portfolio where I can bring these old pieces and still see what they were like back in the day and still be able to display them today. So yeah.
Yeah, well, great work. I can see why you're known as the Batman Builder, and we'll see in some other videos here as well, but fantastic work. Thank you.
Thank you.